evening. This evening, we're going to be talking about product management careers and product professional careers. The end of the year is a great time to kind of do a retrospective of what we'd like to accomplish in the coming year and from a career standpoint and how we'd like to go about that. So we've got a great panel of experts this evening. Our first speaker this evening is Albert Kwan, and he is here to tell us a little bit about the product management and the product professional marketplace of, what the trends are, who's, what are the up and coming things to be aware of, and the different things going on in the marketplace. So with that, I'd like to take it away, Albert.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I don't have slides for this particular exercise, so I'll just go through the 4 bullet points that I've put down here. So number one, my name is Albert. I am the founder of Albert's List. We're a job search community located here in the San Francisco Bay Area with 46,200 people in our Facebook community. And so we connect job seekers, hiring managers, recruiters, and other working professionals for networking and job search purposes. And our biggest audience includes product managers, marketers, data scientists, software engineers, and more. And I'll go ahead and drop the link into the chat window once I'm done with the part of my conversation here, unless one of you wants to do it. And so it's been an interesting year. We came into the year with the pandemic being as bad as it was. And then as things started to open up in the spring and summertime, what we started to notice and what we saw were that a lot of people started quitting their jobs, really along all levels of professions. And this is due to the fact that a lot of people just don't like their career anymore, or they really discovered and rediscovered what their goals and their interests were during the course of the pandemic. And this has become known in the media and broader than that as the Great Resignation. With that, at least I would say 10 million, close to 10 million people have resigned from their jobs over the last couple of months. A lot have gone on their own. 4.54 million businesses have been registered this year, and otherwise, or looking for companies that offer the things we now treasure and value as employees, now that it's proven to be true that we can indeed work remotely and be trusted to do so. And so, the Great Resignation, what does that mean for you? The Great Resignation means that there are opportunities out there for you. And I'm sure the recruiters who are on this call today are going to tell you that that is the case. If you have experience, it's extremely helpful. My email has been, so to say, ringing off the hook since about July with just recruiters with opportunities upon opportunities at companies that I never thought would reach out, but they're reaching out. And so that's definitely ongoing. And then if you don't have as much experience, the opportunity to gain that experience is definitely there, because companies are now realizing that those long job descriptions that they have are truly exactly those wish lists that we've imagined this whole entire time. You don't need to be everything, but you do need to be some of the things in order to qualify for some of these roles. And as I imagine, lots of hiring managers are realizing that they have to temper down and pare down their expectations for what makes a ideal candidate. And so, as always, know what your career journey and career story are. As far as what's resonating with what we're seeing in terms of what job seekers really need, I think that really what I realized this year, and what a lot of people have realized this year, is how much the job search has become a process, right? There's your recruiter screen that turns into your hiring manager screen, that turns into homework, that turns into a multitude of other things along the entire hiring and working journey. And so one thing along the way is that I've experienced really since the beginning of COVID is that Albert's List has conducted mock interviews for people of all sorts of professions since the beginning of the pandemic. We've done at least 60 or 70 of these. And, interviewing remains one of the biggest challenges for a lot of job seekers, because it's always a challenge for them to be able to tell their story, and also for them to be able to share why they're the best candidate. A lot of us go into interviews thinking about ourselves, when in reality, the whole entire process of interviewing is about risk mitigation for you as a candidate, and why you don't have any risks or fewer risks than other candidates who come into the interview process, and why you're the best candidate for the job, and how what you created at your former employers is going to translate into future and continued success for your future employers. And so that's the first big thing that we're seeing. The second thing that we're seeing, and Albert's listed a webinar on this earlier today, is the need for skill transition, or as we like to call it, transferable skills, which is the better term. And so a lot of people, right, amidst the Great Resignation, are wondering, I want to go from X career to Y career. I'm an accountant today, but I want to become a marketer. I'm a marketer today, but I need to become a product manager. And those things are really sparking conversations among people as they think about what it takes and what it means to change skills, change careers, and find the skills between both careers that match and that can tell that adequate story that it brings in competency. And then the third piece is, understanding the whole entire process, whether you should do homework, whether you should take as many Zoom calls as you should to be a part of the interview process. These have been conversations throughout the entire pandemic that we've seen on Albert's list that really gain a lot of feedback. And one of the other things is really just how employers are treating their employees. I'm sure by now a lot of you have read how companies like Better.com did a whole gigantic layoff of 900 individuals over Zoom, right? And so we're now attuned to the fact that, given that we just went through a pandemic where we lost almost 1 million people, that we want bosses who are a lot more compassionate and a lot more understanding of the balance that we need in our lives as we work from home, as we work around the schedules of children, et cetera, and more. And so those are a lot of things that people are now looking for on their wish list as they think about where they want to live and where they want to work. And so, yeah, that's just a few of the thoughts and the insights that I'm gleaning based on a whole entire year here. And yeah, if you want to join Albert's list, I'm going to go ahead and drop the link here today. I definitely invite you to join, and let me know if you have any questions.
Highly recommended. Just as you as we start to pull things together, and I'm sure a number of you are coming up with different questions. I'm going to ask if you put the questions into the chat window. We're going to have a great question session at the end, kind of round robin here, but we want to touch on all the topics first. So again, keep in mind these questions and scribble them down on a Post-it note or put them in the chat window, and we'll circle back to them at the end of the panel. Thanks very much, Albert. That was really spot on of things that I've observed in the marketplace over the last bit. So kind of looking at the product life cycle of a product manager, and as we are the product, kind of the next phase of things is where's my product brochure, which brings us to resumes, and resumes nowadays in the virtual space really lines up with LinkedIn. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Sandra Clark. She is a phenomenal LinkedIn expert and is wise in the ways of being able to put the right things down in the right places that make LinkedIn work for you. So with Sandra, you are on mute, so I'll just warn you. Yeah, take it away, Sandra. Let's hear about LinkedIn and what to do there.
Great, thank you. And it's always great to hear Albert's perspective of what's going on and how that fits in with LinkedIn. So I'm going to race through a bunch of stuff. Anybody notice a few changes on LinkedIn lately? In fact, we were talking in our breakout session, and one person had the new version of LinkedIn. I don't. Changes happening all the time. So it's changing, you're changing, you need to just stay on top of it. But one of the things that sort of drives me crazy is that the advice that I've been giving for the last 10 years, the fundamentals are still true. And I can't tell you how many people I see are not taking care of the fundamentals. So I'm sorry, but you got to hear it, because I don't think you're paying attention to all of those fundamentals, and you've got to do it. So it needs to be complete, your profile. This doesn't mean all the bells and whistles. This means the basic components. You need to have it there. You need to make it easy for people to know who you are, what you have to offer. You need to have keywords. We need to know when we search for something that you're going to show up in a search on LinkedIn, whether it's a hiring manager or recruiter, somebody else. You need to have a certain number of connections. And I usually advise that people have at least 30 connections for every year of their age. So some of you might mean there's some work to do. And I would encourage you, connect with people when you meet them at these events. Just because it's remote doesn't mean you can't connect with them. So, you could do things as simple as putting in your LinkedIn URL into the chat. And at the end of the meeting, download the chat, which you should all know how to do after a couple of years of Zoom. And don't necessarily connect right now, but go back through that chat, look at the person's profile, see what you have in common, connect with them and start a conversation. You need to have activity. Over the past few years, that one of the biggest changes on LinkedIn is, if I could have lightning bolted, have them point here, you want to be active on LinkedIn, because when you're active, you're signaling to the algorithm that you're engaged. And when you are doing things, you are now going to show up more. So all of those things together give you maximum visibility, high SEO, search engine optimization ranking. This is specific to LinkedIn, but it does have implications to Google as well. So your basic components, again, there's so much more that you can add, but again, can't tell you how many people I see that don't have the basics. You got to have the photo, a professional headshot, please no more than 2 to 3 years old. The men that grew beards over COVID, if you're going to keep the beards, we need a new shot. The women who went gray had to get new headshots, because we need to look like we want to look when we go into an interview. Professional headline. You want those keywords in the headline. That's really important. Doesn't matter if right now you're not in that role, that's still who you are. You need your about section. It's a powerful opportunity to tell your story. It's not like the resume format, third person. This is you talking about how you've accomplished things in your career. Tell us the story so we can see how you're going to be successful when we have jobs open. Your job history, yeah, you don't necessarily want a ton of information there. This is not your resume. It should be different. It's a little bit like Tinder or a dating app or something, where you want enough information to get the recruiters, hiring managers to swipe right, to contact you and want to learn more. If it's all there, they go, they say, nah, not for me, and they move on. So don't include it all, give them enough to tease them to want more. Got to have your education there, your skills, very important to have, again, keyword search, contact information. I can't tell you how many people I work with and they haven't looked at their contact information in so long. It's an old email, an old work email, a website for an old company. And connections, as I say, you got to have a certain number of connections. Use these groups. Just because they're virtual doesn't mean you can't connect here and then carry that conversation online. So the mistake I see, I said this last year, and I'm going to say it again. Some of you were here last year and you still haven't paid attention. And then it's, remember the old Kevin Costner movie, Field of Dreams? Build it and they'll come. People think, well, they built this great profile and now they can just sit there and people are going to come in. Doesn't work like that. You've got to be active. A great profile that's not active, it's like LinkedIn puts it in long-term parking. We don't want to get any dings or scratches on it, so we're not going to touch it. You've got to get a little scratched up and dirty and get involved. People get jobs through networking, who you know. These people in these this group here today and other places, use that network. Who knows? Connect with, hey, your sister-in-law might work at a company where there's some great opportunities, might know someone. You don't know who you know. I've taught classes at San Jose State for years. I connect with the students there. They're now moving into management positions. They're starting to hire. You just don't know. So job seekers in general, connect more broadly. Don't think you're just going to connect with people you know, people you'd like to know, people who know people you'd like to know. Be a little strategic about it. Don't just randomly connect with everyone. You want to know why you're connected with them. Reconnect with old colleagues. Those old colleagues probably have new jobs at a place you might love to work. Be visible online. That's that whole activity thing. Biggest changes, oh God, LinkedIn and their changes. every single day, there's at least some little change, sometimes big, sometimes little, but always something. So these are some, just a few of the major changes. So there are more characters in almost every section. Used to be 120 characters in the headline, now 220. There's now about 2,600 characters available that you can use in the about section, etc. But it shows less. So we only see the first 3 lines. With the new design, it will be 4, but we only see a few lines. So you got to grab people's attention to get them to open and read the rest. Something that when we were talking before the meeting began officially, at least 2 people had to explain how to say their name. New feature, LinkedIn, so easy. Pick up your phone, go to your LinkedIn profile on your phone, tell us how to pronounce your name. Now it's 10 seconds. I don't know about you, but it doesn't take 10 seconds to say Sandra Clark. But you can include a little marketing message if you want. But all of you who have had your names mangled, please add the pronunciation to your name. So easy. You have to do it on your phone, but once you've done it, it plays on your phone and desktop. Cover stories, you're not probably going to do. If you see an orange ring about someone's profile, if you go to my profile, you'll see a moving video. Click on it, it plays a 30-second video. You're probably not going to do it. I want you to know what it is. Creator mode, most of you should not accept creator mode. Some of you should. Albert might be one if he hasn't, that would make sense for him. Most of you probably not. And if you have questions about that, you're welcome to reach out to me. I won't critique your whole profile, but I'm happy to answer individual questions. And the redesign, as I mentioned, is rolling out now. I've still got the old version, and at least one person in my group had the new one. And there are mostly not significant visual changes, but there are things that might irritate you. It hasn't made it more user-friendly. Job seekers, this has been available for a year or so now. You can say that you're open to work, and this is visible to everybody, not just recruiters, hiring managers, but to everyone. If you are a manager or above, in general, I don't like to recommend this. I feel it looks too hungry. If you're more entry level, showing that you're open to work is fine. And I'd be interested in the recruiters' opinions about this. I generally tend to recommend most of the people I work with not to do it. If you need practice doing your interview prep, there's a place on LinkedIn for you to record yourself answering the typical interview questions. Nobody else sees it. It's safe, just private to you, but you can share it with a friend or somebody you're working with on your job search, just privately with them to see how you do in answering those questions. It's a very cool tool. Take advantage of it. There's also Resume Builder. You can build multiple resumes from your profile on LinkedIn. Most of you are probably comfortable using Word, but it is a pretty cool feature. And those are my slides. And I expect you'll have questions for me after. And we'll got lots of other great content.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Sandra. That was fascinating. I wasn't aware that there were so many changes kind of in the works with LinkedIn. That's gonna, I think the end of the year after, you've kind of cleared the last deliverable item off your list and you get a little bit of breathing room around the holidays and you're feeling like you need a little break from family time or whatever else is going on for your holiday. It's a great time to kind of just double check in once a year at minimum and see like, oh, am I keeping up with things? So hence this fantastic panel. With that, we're going to move on to the next section of our panel. I'd like to introduce Olga, who, we've kind of covered, here's the marketplace, and, here's your brochure or your advertising that you're going to put forward. One next component, if this was a real product launch, you'd be saying, well, how do I get in front of people? Everything's driven by search algorithms, and I want to figure out what do I need to do to get that message now that I have the content in front of the right people. And so with that, Olga, if you would like to unmute, and Olga's going to tell us about working with the algorithms and getting out there.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for spending some time with us today. I'm Olga Okan. I've been recruiting for very many years in high technology. I'm currently at a startup called Plyops. I got started in corporate recruiting thanks to Mr. Tom Bouchot, who's one of the presenters. He gave me my first shot at corporate recruitment. Before that, I worked at a small executive search firm.
So do you forgive me yet?
No, I told you. You know, executive search was cool and fun, and I love to hire people, but corporate recruiting is super exciting. I love to talk to candidates. I wish I had more time to spend with candidates in helping them with their job search, but I kind of build it into my screens because I feel like, you know, if I'm not going to be able to hire you, at least I'm going to set you up so that you have an easier job search, and kind of believe in very much paying it forward with the candidates, and then they become sources. And then if not, they'll remember me and I get to hire them later on. So with that said and done, Sandra's advice as far as LinkedIn goes, it's just everything she said is spot on. The only thing I kind of wanted to piggyback onto is, depending on the version of LinkedIn, if you have a paid version of LinkedIn, I've found, because I help people with their LinkedIn profiles also, depending on what part of the country you're in and how much you're paying LinkedIn, they roll out different versions all over the place, which makes her job probably a super pain in the butt. Because when you go and tell someone how to change certain settings, it's not where it is on your profile, where you're looking, and you kind of blindly figure out how to give someone advice that's maybe got something older going on. But for sure, adding all of that information, filling in your profile as much as possible, and teasing, don't copy and paste your resume, is super important. You want to get someone interested enough so they'll reach out to you, and then you can turn down the position, or you'll have details on the role and be able to just respond back with a very tailored resume that'll give you the best shot possible for that role. And that's kind of what your resume does for you. So as far as LinkedIn goes, Sandra mentioned also doing your keywords in your professional tagline is very, very important. But you got to remember to do not just functionality, but also the industry. So product keywords, so semiconductors, data centers, chips, the specific drill down into, like, maybe I didn't know that they're expanding the amount of verbiage you can add in there, which is awesome for me. But as a recruiter, I'll sit and I need, you know, someone enterprise, sales, data center, semiconductor, you know, boom. And if you don't have, that's exactly what you do, but you don't have that in your professional tagline, you're not going to come up in search results. And then also, depending on how full your profile is, LinkedIn will push you up in results if you have dynamic content. If you're writing recommendations, recommendations are the best. I recommend that you write recommendations, and especially if you have someone that you're connected to that's very popular. I often will go down and see, all right, who's this candidate that looks great? Who are they recommending and who's recommended them? And I find leads to candidates through that. And it's like picking back on someone's popular profile to get more eyeballs on you. And it's a way to be able to put yourself out there. If you haven't grown your network and you're working on it, at least you'll know that this person who has this many connections, anybody who goes to their profile, you'll be right there. And if you write a really, really nice recommendation, they'll put you at the top and you'll get more eyeballs on your profile. With that said and done, as far as resumes go, I'm pretty a stickler about a bunch of things in regards to resumes. And so I actually shared with Tom a very, very old heat map that they did of what recruiters see, or how recruiters look at resumes. And everyone knows it's like several seconds that you have to make an impression when someone's looking at your paper, right? What represents you when you're not there. And so having one of the most important things I think you can do is having the first third of your resume very well constructed. And if you do a really good job, you'd be able to take that and basically, instead of tailoring your entire resume for a role, take that first third and be able to change it out. So obviously your contact information And yes, it kills me not to see people's LinkedIn profiles. It has to be on your resume, please. And then a professional tagline, which just like your LinkedIn, should be with the technology keywords and also your functionality keywords. A short little summary on what you do, and then you want to have all the rest of the keywords that are relevant for the role that you are applying for right there in that first third of your resume, because right there is where you'll engage your audience. And if you set that all and everything's matched up, then a recruiter will spend much, much more time reading your resume. And so that's probably one of the most impactful things that I can say as far as doing your resume goes. I do want to say also, I talk to candidates obviously every day, and if resume, and everyone has resume advice, if resume advice doesn't feel right, don't take it. Just because someone does it for a living for whatever reason, it doesn't mean that it's right. Use your instincts, and if it doesn't make sense, don't listen to them. One-page resumes, I'm sorry, as a recruiter, and if you're in high tech, there's just, if it takes me a page to describe what the role entails, I'm not sure how a candidate can possibly tell me what they've done and me be able to really have a good, idea of what their background is and how much of a fit they are for a role in one page. I don't know, that's me. So a bunch of people disagree with that, that's fine. But, oh, and another real good piece of advice I like to tell everyone is, as soon as you start a job, copy and paste the position description, put it at the bottom of your resume, so that when you go and update your resume, a year and a half, 2 years, you're going to go make a move, you have that there and you know what you were hired to do. Because going back and kind of recreating and trying to figure out, okay, wait a minute, what are my responsibilities all day? Just make it easy on yourself, copy and paste that job that you just landed. And then that way you can, you'll have something to start with at least. Let me think, what else? Contact information on LinkedIn. So I'm not sure if anyone or if everyone's aware, but LinkedIn is very expensive. And InMail, I think, is valued at $10 per message. And let me tell you, if you have your phone number and your email address in your summary, you're going to get a message from me faster than anybody else, because you're saving me money. And I have LinkedIn Recruiter Lite. I only have so many messages a month, and I rip through them probably in the first 2-3 days of the month. And then I have to go and use other tools and spend money and research and find other ways to get a hold of candidates. So if you don't want to exactly put your cell phone number and email address out there for the whole world, get a Google Voice number and a Gmail email address that's dedicated for LinkedIn. At least you're putting yourself out there, and you can have it forward onto your phone, and when it rings, and set from that number, you can decide to answer it or not. But a bunch of us recruiters like to text. Text will go through. Some of us like to call. We'll leave you a message. That's all I can think of off the top of my head for now.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Olga. That was it's great to hear so many different takes on the whole life cycle of wanting to make a shift in your career, and then kind of end to end. So once you've kind of familiarized yourself with the market and you've built your brochure of here's what I want to say and here's how I'm getting the attention in the right spot, kind of the I won't say the final stage, because the final stage is actually starting a new position, and even then it doesn't finish per se. We're all about having closed loop processes nowadays, but the next step in the chain is typically talking to an interviewer and preparing for that and figuring out how to manage the relationship with the recruiter that you get contacted by. And for that part of the chain, I'd like to introduce Tom Burchard. He's been a heavy-duty recruiter for many years in Silicon Valley and has seen a lot of changes and is still seeing changes, I'm sure. So Tom, if you can unmute yourself and take it away.
All right, so I'm going to go through a brief prezo, and I call it Some Thoughts on the Job Search. I will tell you, folks, I'm going to take a slightly different approach than my colleagues have taken, give you a little bit of a framework, and just talk about the job search in some respects holistically, because there's a lot of aspects to a job search. You saw some great ideas and thoughts, Albert's list, LinkedIn, your resume. And yeah, there comes a point where you actually are interviewing and you're in front of somebody, and we can absolutely talk about that. But I wanted to, first of all, some of you may or may not know who I am, so I thought I'll share a little bit about that. But before I get into that, I thought I always like to know, what do people say about job hunting and job searching? So I have three quotes in here. One of them, the first one, is a repurposed Arnold Palmer quote, Arnold Palmer, the golfer. And so the part that says finding a job is, he never talked about that. He said golf, right? But finding a job is deceptively simple and endlessly complex. I think it sort of wraps it up in a nutshell, because when you're looking for a job, it's like people call you and great, I'm going to do a phone screen, and now I'm going to do an interview, and now I'm going to go on site, I'm going to meet people, and then you're like, ew, like, I don't like these people that I'm meeting with. Or they say, hey, we really appreciate meeting you, but we're going to move forward with other candidates. So it's really complex. It's like dating. The theme song to the dating game kind of rattles through my head, right? It's like, it's very complex, and there's a lot of facets to it. So it's deceptively simple and endlessly complex. But then you get into this kind of can or can't thing. Like, people don't want to put themselves out there or apply to jobs because they're worried they may not be 100% fit. And guess what? If you think that way, you're not a fit, right? You have to be positive. You have to think, and like, if you think you can do it, you can do it. You think you can't do it, you can't do it, right? You got to be positive, and that's a Henry Ford quote there. And then, but if you find a job you love, you'll never work again. And I think that's been said in a variety of different ways by a variety of different people throughout time. The one I found was from Winston Churchill. But it just sort of sets your mind at, if you find something you love and that's meaningful to you, it doesn't feel like work. And so that's really, in some respects, what all of us are looking for. Product management is a wonderful career choice, and a lot of people really aspire to be a great product management professional. I've seen people move into product management from engineering professions. I've seen people move into product management from program management. Different companies will call it different things. Some people call it NPI. Some people call it, some people muddy the titles in different directions. But at the end of the day, if you find something you love, it doesn't feel like work. And so that's what we're all really going for, is to find something that's meaningful to us, and something that we enjoy for a long time. A bit about me, I've been working in talent acquisition for over 22 years, long time. I've done everything from fetching coffee to developing and launching global recruiting strategies. And I'm not being silly when I say I used to fetch coffee. My first job in talent acquisition, I ran around, and there was, engineers and artists. I worked for PDI, the company that made the movie Shrek. So I did a lot of fetching things, and they had these bicycles that you drive between buildings, and so I'd put coffee pots and cover them up and put them in a little basket in the bicycle and drive it to the other building so I could feed coffee to people who were more important than myself. It was quite a job. I started my career as a contract recruiter, had my own company after that, was made full-time employee by one of my clients, where I subsequently worked for a long time, 13 years. And now I've become the accidental job hopper. I looked at my resume and I'm like, holy criminy, 4 jobs since 2015. I was at Sandisk for 13 years. And now I've become this job hopper. And I'm like, what the heck happened to me? It's very different. And so I've had to sort of reevaluate how I approach job searching, because certain companies are looking at me differently. But at the end of the day, I care deeply about the career search. So much that I'm actually on the board of directors for C6 as a nonprofit that helps people in career transition. I worked with ProMatch and done panels. Olga and I have done panels for ProMatch in the past, and different organizations that help people who are looking for answers about, gosh, what can I do? So anytime SVPMA calls me up and says, hey, can you come down and talk to the folks here? I'm like, absolutely, because I'm very, very passionate about this work. I think it's important work. So here's what we can talk about today, right? And I'm not going to go into all the advice everybody else gave. I'm really happy to just answer questions. You've got some great advice from Olga about resume writing. You can ask her, you can ask me. Interviewing, it's hard. Interviewing is really hard. Networking, negotiating, follow through partnership with recruiters, and how to tell your story. You know, just to give you a little bit of flavor on the interviewing process, I actually ended my job with a company called Proofpoint, amazing company, amazing people. Back on September 27th was my last day with them. And I've been looking, you know, kind of in that job search, and I am going to be starting a new job on Monday. I'm not sharing with anybody yet where I'm going, but I'm starting a very, very exciting position. But it really took some soul searching for me to figure out exactly where the next best step was for me. And that soul searching was so very important. So that's effectively what we can talk about today. But there's some things that I've learned in my own career journey that I'm happy to share as well. Because a career journey is, even if you're in a job and you're kind of looking for what that next step looks like, it's stressful, very stressful. And so there's some things that I learned and I'm happy to kind of approach the answers or the things advice that I give from these perspectives. That, you know, the path that you want is not always the path you're on. You know, I didn't want to be a job hopper. I really didn't. I'm, you know, that 13 years that I spent at SanDisk is representative of what I want in my career. I like going to a place and being there a long time. 3 of those 4 jobs ended because of acquisition. You know, company gets acquired, and different visions and such, or they move offices to different locations or things like that. And sometimes you choose when you move, when you have a career transition, and sometimes life chooses for you. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with that. The path you're on, your career journey, your career trajectory is not always linear, and that's okay. What do I mean by linear? Well, okay, let's talk about real quickly a linear career. Somebody graduates from college. Maybe they have a shiny degree in accounting or marketing or business, and they say, I want to be a product manager. So they get a job, and maybe they're associate PM for a growing company, and that company grows up a bit, and so do they. Then they move over, and now they're a product manager, and they're doing some great work, and now they're senior product. Now they become a manager of product managers, and now they're a director, senior director, VP, SVP, right? And careers are very rarely like that. They very rarely look as linear as what I just described. Sometimes you take a sidestep. My job at Proofpoint was a little bit of a sidestep for me. And that was amazing because I learned so much. But don't stress if your career does take a sideways step. Sometimes that's needed for you to learn, for you to grow, for you to advance. But this is what it all boils down to. When you have a choice, choose wisely. The final scene of Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, you know, he chose poorly, right? You don't want to be in that situation where you're making the wrong choice. And I've made wrong choices in my career. I've made wrong choices. I know what they are. I can point to them and say that was the wrong choice, and I learned from it, and I don't make that same mistake again. But there is a fallacy to the word stability, right? I've actually chosen jobs because I thought they would be more stable. One of them was working for a little company called EMC. EMC was the world's largest data storage company, been around since the 70s. What can go wrong? Nothing went wrong, but they did get acquired by Dell in the largest technology acquisition in history to that point, and they basically shut down a large percentage of the West Coast, and my job ended up going away. So there's this kind of fallacy to people thinking about, if I go here, it's going to be stable. Okay? Who you work for or with, one of the most important aspects. So as you're going through that interviewing process and you're talking to these people, my third bullet point, listen to your gut. Feel like these people are my people. These are the people that I would love to work with, work for. This is the right company, this is the right feel. You will know it. Don't ignore the yellow flags. Don't ignore the red flags. You have a choice when you are in that position, or when you have that choice, choose wisely, because it is so very important to that interviewing process is meaningful, not just for the company you're interviewing with, but to yourself. Listen to your gut. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tom. That was, yeah, that's always great to hear some personal stories and realize that, okay, maybe I'm not alone out there going through different levels of chaos. So with that, one of the things we'd like to do now is to open up to Q&A, questions from the audience. You've now heard from all four of our panel experts. And if you are feeling camera ready, feel free to raise your hand, and we will call on you, or actually probably better yet, throw the question into the chat window, and then let me know whether you'd like to ask the question directly yourself, or if you're feeling shy or your camera is not being particularly kind to you this evening, feel free to just throw it into the chat window, and we can address the question directly. So it's up to you. There's two ways to get in. And with that, I'm going to take our first question. Alok has his hand up in the window. So Alok, if you'd like to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, thanks. And Christina also has a question in chat. She beat me to it, but yeah, I'll go with my question. And that is just continuing a discussion that Albert and I were having. One thing I've noticed, and I can't say this is for all roles, probably engineering not as much so, but I'm feeling, so my background is more of a product marketing role. And I love to know from recruiters also specifically. I'm almost feeling these days, being in Silicon Valley has almost become more of a liability, because companies don't want to hire employees here because of the premium cost. Now, I want to add what's kind of interesting to that. There's a lot of other parts of the country that are really expensive, but I've noticed Silicon Valley and people value tech more in Silicon Valley than even other major metros that are expensive, like New York City and some of the others. So I feel that there is a premium price, but I wonder if it's waning. And like I've talked to one company and they said, we want to hire anywhere but Silicon Valley, just because we can get someone for 30% less. So I want to know just what everyone from a recruiter standpoint is, but it's really important to emphasize engineering, which I consider core to every tech company, and then everything else. And because those are either you're building a product or, or supporting it. So that would be great to know.
Alok, I'm going to real quickly jump in here. So from what I'm seeing, you're going to get a mixture of both. And there's a benefit to the current environment we're in, whereas more companies will look at people who are remote. And if they're hiring out of New York and you're in California, you're remote to them, right? And remote, New York's a high cost of living, California is a high cost of living. You may not see a huge salary decrease offered thereby. But we are seeing, for example, in certain areas where position location is not as important to the success of the job, that if you can hire from anywhere, sometimes that's sales and such, you can hire pretty much anywhere. Your playing field is so much larger. but that doesn't mean you're not going to get called. So let me give you an example, or not an example, but more of a hypothetical. If you have more companies that are capable of calling you because they've had an awakening and they're like, wow, we can actually get meaningful work out of somebody who's not co-located with us, then you're going to get more calls about remote work. And the companies that are not calling you as much, you'll get a decrease here and an increase there. So I've seen it sort of balance out, right? Where you're just gonna, maybe you get fewer local calls, but more remote calls. I don't know if that's what you're experiencing, but that's what I've heard from a lot of the recruiters I work with, that the competition is different, but it doesn't mean it's changed to the detriment of the job seeker in the Bay Area.
Interesting answer. We've got a question in from Christina, who was the first in the chat window with her question. She was asking, are there key times that companies tend to hire? Like, is there a big burst, around the end of the year, the beginning of a quarter? Is there any kind of a pattern or rhyme or reason from a calendar perspective? Olga or Tom, if you
I think, I mean, it's depending on what company I'm working for. I've been, Christmas Day making offers, New Year's before midnight trying to close one more. And right now, I gotta say it's pretty insane. Candidates are coming like hiring bonuses. Didn't get to give any of those out for a while, and all of a sudden everybody needs a hiring bonus. Candidates coming with multiple offers in hand and still looking, still shopping. I think right now there's just a shortage of, not shortage, but as a recruiter, there's so much noise, I think, out there for candidates that it's hard for them to kind of wade through all the different opportunities. And so getting to the connecting so we can connect and hire, it's just become a lot more challenging. But yeah, no, I think it's pretty crazy right now. And I expect the beginning of the year to be just as bad.
So you're not seeing a holiday slowdown like some people might expect.
No.
Good. So the message is full steam ahead. Don't sit there and wait for the end of the holidays saying, well, no one's going to talk to me or pick up.
Nope, because you figure a lot of people are going to sit there and take advantage. A
lot of companies
think that way. So
yeah, a lot of companies are at different points in their fiscal year, right? So not everybody has a calendar fiscal year. So sometimes people are approaching the end of their fiscal year now, or sometimes they're right at the beginning. A lot of companies do quarter one is the last 3 months of the year. So that's actually ramp up time, right? So it just depends on the fiscal year. And I would agree with Olga. It's crazy right now. There's a lot of companies out there that are hiring right now. It's heavy duty and they need to meet numbers in the beginning of the year. And in order to do that, they need to get people on board January, February.
Olga, are those hiring bonuses, are they typically for certain positions, or is this across the board, number one? Number two, is it normally something you need to ask for, or a lot of times they're just throwing it out there and offering that bonus?
So typically I have to justify why we need to give someone a hiring bonus. So someone's leaving in the middle of a quarter and they're due a big chunk and we want them to start now. We want to keep them whole. Sometimes there's competing offers and it's just that little extra to make things easier on the candidate. And sometimes, let's say someone's going to be moving and we don't have relocation set up yet. So we'll just give them a, 5-10K hiring bonus to help out the move. But I'm seeing that candidates are coming with offers in hand right off the bat. And those include hiring bonuses. So it's just whatever you need to do to land a candidate right now, because it's so tough. You got to do it, and that's a lot of coming out of the wallet.
The next question we have is from Mike Duff, and this may be for Sandra. One one of the things he was wondering is if anyone had any advice for those of us that have, say, 20 plus years of experience, and maybe have switched through different industries or different technologies. No technology is around for 20 years as emerging, and then suddenly it's old hat and then it's old legacy stuff. So as a PM in Silicon Valley, we're constantly shifting around, and the resume can get, from a story perspective, a little confusing where, well, how can you be an expert in this, but you're also an expert in this older technology and the older technology before that? So any particular advice on the LinkedIn profile, the resume, to try and coherently link together in a story so that you're not viewed as, well, you're an expert in this 10-year-old technology, how could you know the latest thing? And how do you put your best foot forward on that?
Okay, well, I've got a couple of comments about, I'm sure the resume people will have something different, but one is you don't have to go back to the beginning of time in your profile. Usually in Silicon Valley and technology, if you go back 10 years, that's enough. But sometimes you need to, because you've been in a company so long, that would truncate it. But you don't have to include everything. And you can tell your story. Your about section is this great opportunity. So if you've learned and you've been an expert in all these technologies, what you are is great, is learning the new thing that is going to make your company more successful, more efficient. So that's a great skill set. And maybe that's more important as your skill than the specific actual skill that you have. So tell your story and show us how what you've done is going to help us for what we need now.
Good advice. Thank you, Sandra. The next question, we had a little bit of a discussion in the chat window. I wanted to make sure that everyone got a chance to hear from Albert. He was answering a question about kind of wage inflation and what's been seen in that space, as far as, are we seeing prices go up from that perspective? And then a secondary question laid on top of that is, as companies have sort of moved out of the Bay Area, or spread out, and people are working from anywhere. And so, are you going to hire a Silicon Valley person when you could hire somebody in, a lesser expensive part of the country? Like, how is that working out from a pattern perspective in the marketplace?
I also wanted to bring up something around the California exodus too, because that's kind of, I think, maybe where Alok's comment was going. And I apologize if I mispronounced that name. I think one of the things, and so we on Albert's List do a monthly call with an MBA finance professor from the University of New Mexico to just discuss where the job market is going. And one of our topics earlier this year was the California exodus, because everybody was making a big deal about it. U-Haul trucks cost a ton getting out of state, but they're cheap coming in, et cetera, and so forth. And there is some, while there is some like validation that yes, people have left, people have always left. The other thing is that California, did grow during the last 10 years. We lost an electoral seat, a congressional seat, only because we didn't grow as fast as the Texases, Floridas, and so forth of the world. The other piece of data that they ran earlier this year with the United States Postal Service was to see how many people actually left the state. And so what ended up happening was most people moved out of San Francisco, but they didn't move out of California completely. They moved to the suburbs. They moved to Walnut Creek, South San Jose, Morgan Hill, presumably for more space. And so most people didn't leave California when this whole thing hit, because they still want the weather, they still want the closer access to the employment opportunities when this pandemic presumably ends, and they're thinking of moving back. And then I think if you also look at the additional trends, rents are unfortunately in the Bay Area on the way back up, because people are anticipating the traffic to start coming up again. And I think depending on if you are back in traffic going down the 101 or the 880, which are our local freeways for those of you who aren't from here, it's also definitely started to pick up too. So I don't necessarily buy the we don't want to hire from the Bay Area as economic talk as much as it may be political speculative talk. If you also look at the companies who moved their headquarters outside of the Bay Area, there was also a lot of interesting stuff around there too. The day after Elon Musk announced that Tesla would depart, he leased another entire office building in Palo Alto. So there, in my mind, is a desire for continued Bay Area talent, but without the taxation interests of California. And so that's why in the comments section, I think the one company that he did speak to is an exception rather than what is going to be a long-term trended rule, which at that point, I think will be definitely an issue due to, other external causes that we've all heard about that include not just, taxes, which are high, but also the very lack of housing that we have here in the Bay Area that continues to be an issue. So those are just some thoughts based on some additional observations and conversations that I've had this year.
Very good. Yeah, so it's been an interesting year or two.
Yeah, it has.
I think Tom had a couple of comments he wanted to add into that question.
Yeah, this is the what do you do when you have 20 years and how to tie it all together with different backgrounds and stuff. I just wanted to add to that. So as I mentioned, my job at Proofpoint ended, and while I got some initial traction in my job search, it was all going the wrong direction, right? So what was happening was people were contacting me based on the last 2 years. And the last 2 years, I was more in a strategic / operational role. And my career goal was to get back into talent acquisition proper, AKA running a talent acquisition team, running the recruiters and the whole thing, right? The whole wham shebang. And I told a couple of people, if I never have to run a mobility organization again, as long as it'll be too soon, because I'm not good with immigration and relocation stuff. I'm happy to deal with that team to help when we have candidates that need to relocate, but that's not my area of interest. But all the opportunities that were coming to me initially were recruiting operations roles. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And I thought to myself, wait a second, I have been in recruiting. I've just been in the strategic side of recruiting. I've been doing the planning for how do you get your talent brand out in different regions, right? When you don't have a strong talent brand, what do you do? How do you run events in a region to populate the interest, and then when you want to hire those individuals, they're already ready to go because they're excited about you, your technology, the company, right? And I was doing all that work, and wait a second, what am I highlighting I'm highlighting the things I have been doing, but more tactical stuff. So I had to go back and kind of move around things and highlight those things that were really exemplifying my interest and honestly sharing the stuff I was doing, but just in a different way. So for those individuals who have a goal for I've been doing this work for 20 years, but I've kind of taken side steps. Remember, it's okay not to have a linear career, but what you want to show is you want to show continuity. What did I do and how did it influence where I am now? And what are some of the great things? How did I learn in these previous 2 roles that may have not had a PM title, but what did I do that gave me the ability to do this work at the level you're asking now? And highlight that in your LinkedIn profile. To Olga's point and to Sandra, sorry. But to their points, you don't want to just necessarily copy and paste your resume, but you do want to show that continuity of kind of what you've done and how you've grown into your role so people can see your story. Because when they're reading your LinkedIn profile, they're not listening to you speak and talk to it. They're just reading a website. So that website has to talk for you in the best way possible. So I just wanted to comment on that 20-year, because it's near and dear to my heart since over 20 years experience.
It is Sandra, and don't forget everybody add the pronunciation to your profile.
Ah,
Yeah,
there we go.
I didn't listen to your LinkedIn. I'm sorry.
Good reminder. Speaking of that, we do have a question for you, Sandra. Dave was asking, what's a reasonable amount of time to spend per week to be considered active on LinkedIn?
Okay, to be considered active on LinkedIn is different than if you're in active job search or growing your business, and it's going to depend. But the trick is every day. You're better off every day, 10 minutes a day, than you are saving it all up to the weekend. The LinkedIn algorithm is like feeding the fish. You want a little bit of food in the tank every day. If you wait once a week, they're probably going to die. So a little bit every day, and then you decide if you're a job seeker, you're going to spend a little more time. If you've got your own business, you're going to spend more time, but a little bit of time building your career, thought leadership. Maybe that time is spent connecting to people, but a little bit of time every day. And then I often recommend people decide how much they're willing to do and set a timer. Sometimes I'll have an executive, I don't want to spend time there. I get sucked in. And then, I before I know it, I've spent too long on it. So I tell them to set a timer. And they're so cute, CEOs or something reporting to me. I set a timer, Sandra, for 10 minutes, and I did it. And when it went off, I stepped away and walked away so that I was excited to go back the next day. And I think that's the trick. Be excited to go back every day a little bit.
That's a great technique. I like the kitchen timer idea. Somebody I knew that was an author was asked how they generated the impetus to sit down and write a new set of pages each day and not get stuck with writer's block. And they said that they cut themselves off in the middle of something. And so the next day they were like, darn it, I need to finish writing this almost sentence I'm in the middle of. And they didn't have to sit down and say, what am I going to do? They already had something in their head right away that they wanted to tackle as soon as they walked into their writer's office. So that's always an interesting thing that is managing time and making sure that stays in the productive range and not the wandering through kind of staring at the goldfish that you're trying to feed every day. The next question we have is from Kaspar, and I think this is probably directed towards Olga. He was asking, is there a difference between a hiring bonus and a sign-up bonus? Sometimes there's a lot of different terminology in there. Is there any kind of hard and fast rule on that?
You know what, Tom, to me, no, not that. I'd say basically it just depends what company you're at. They might call it something different. Right, Tom?
Well, that was easy.
Right, Mr. Tom?
Yeah, I would say sometimes companies will offer you a relocation bonus because you're relocating and they'll call it a relocation bonus. A signing bonus is usually used, or hiring bonus, same thing, right? But just used to like, hey, you're leaving money on the table and we're going to give you some money. So don't feel so bad about that. Like, you're not going to not join because you have $20,000 waiting for you at this other company in a month. We'll give you $20,000 now, and then you can walk away from that other $20,000, right? That's usually what they're using.
Just want to add to that comment in case someone gets it in the name of relocation or something, that it is taxable. One thing that you could perhaps suggest is, can I do it submitted as an expense report? So that's kind of one loophole, because you get a surprise that, oh, this is taxable.
Little things that you don't realize until you've shared with some other folks.
They'll figure out, oh yeah, we want it to be taxable because we spend less, right? If you do reimbursement, companies will say, okay, $10,000 reimbursement is, that's you have to gross it up usually for taxes, or yeah.
By the way, speaking of, and that usually happens when you get relocation, but this could actually apply to anything. And in the past, it used to be only executives had this privilege. Let's say there's sign-on bonus is a great example. Usually there's a clause, if you leave within a year, you need to return it. And I guess it's a hot enough market to do this. Can you say it's not a problem, but I want employment protection for that year too? Is there a way you can, for relocation, people have done this, by the way. Not everyone does this, but it is I know Olga keeps on shaking her head.
Yeah,
But
I've never, California employment's at will.
no, that's fine. Lay you off, but pay you for the whole year then that you were supposed to be there, or if it's a 2-year, then for those 2 years. So, I mean, executives do this all the time, by the way, right?
Yeah, I've not seen it. It's like the companies want the option to boot you, they need to.
Yeah, no, they can boot, but they just put you on. You have to pay you out for
Oh,
those.
you mean
It's the
retain?
golden
Oh, yeah,
parachute
no,
rule.
definitely. As far as clawing you down for a year, 2 years, depending on how much it is. Yeah, like Facebook. We had a recruiting coordinator that used to work with us, Danielle. Facebook dug their claws into that poor child forever. My goodness. And then she wanted to leave so badly the first year, and then now she's been there like 3 years. So kind of she was forced to stay there because they gave her a big chunk of change, and she struggled through and actually turned out to be a good thing because she's been there 3 years now, and it turned around for her in the end.
That kind of brings up another question of, say you've gotten an offer and you've reported into the office and you've discovered, oh my, what have I walked into? And find out that it's, a toxic, Twitter's full of tales of toxic work cultures and, oh, this wasn't what I was promised. They slanted it one way. They, as more of a either upward mobility, and it's like, no, that's actually not even on the table, or they said it was like a senior product management role, but really I'm just somebody's intern helper fetching coffee, and I really expected to be doing product design. So any comments about kind of how to suss that out in the interview stage, as well as like what to do if you find yourself in that position?
I know you mean it metaphorically, but I don't really feel like jobs anymore require kids or people to go and fetch coffee.
That's so
They
20
do.
years ago,
I don't
Albert.
know.
It feels like such an early 2000s and before kind of thing when, I was going through high school and early college. But I think I feel like, at least in my observation of interns over the last couple of years, is that we give them pretty substantial things to do. So, but I mean, when it comes to sussing out the conversation, it's taking notes on your end, asking good questions because you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And I think one benefit of the Great Resignation is that if you require more conversations, I think some of these employers will give it to you. I've had that experience where it's like they will come back to you and be like, I know you said no, but would a conversation with person XYZ help the case? And you should absolutely take that conversation. But as I think any recruiter and career coach and anyone in between will tell you, going into any opportunity with multiple job offers as an outcome is always the best goal, because that gives you all the leverage in the world, and that's pretty much what negotiating a job offer is.
Yes, so if I may jump in here, you can have as many conversations as you want, and sometimes it's going to happen that you get in there and it just doesn't work out. And I say, rip the Band-Aid off, jump and get going to your next thing. Make it just go. I just recently hired an office manager / EA, and she had a lot of big company experience, but she was bored. And we put her through the ringer, and she came in at the very end when we thought we were going to hire one person, and the team kind of ended up going with this other person. And like third day there, she called me crying.
Oh no.
And so I just said, look, let's get you out of here. I'll help you transition. We'll go find you a new place. Called the candidate number 2. Had to do what I had to do in the conversations with her to beg her to consider us before anyone else. But I think if you get in there and you realize it's just not for you, the faster you can pull yourself out of there and move along, the better for you. but it's gonna happen. It's just no matter what, you can spend so much time and you can talk to everybody. I think that I like the
Yeah, we
drive.
don't live in a world anymore where you have to spend 30 years at a company,
Well,
like our grandparents or parents did, you know?
Yep. It's
My mother spent almost 30 years at IBM and doesn't understand why I don't have anything more than 2 years on my resume. so, you know.
Well, I say another technique I think from the interview standpoint is that you know, they're allowed to call your references, and I think there's some opportunity for the candidates to do their own research on the company of, okay, I'm gonna find some references for this company and try and get the scoop of what's going on between Glassdoor and
Glassdoor, definitely.
yeah, and then also just you know, chatting with some, hey, can I talk to somebody who's in the software production team? If I'm interacting with them a lot, I didn't see them on the interview panel. Like, definitely kind of get to know who the personalities are and get a feel for. And those are great questions to ask in an interview. I always have gotten fantastic responses when I say, give me a taste of the culture. What's a day in the life of, you know, what's the interaction with the finance team or the, you know, all the different, because there's always conflicts in a product manager position because you're sitting in between the engineers and the marketing and the sales and all these different groups. So, you know, that's always a thing to delve into, I think, because we're front and center and all that. You do have one more question, and then we're going to start winding down a bit. We're going to have a question from Jim Shibler. So if you wanted to unmute and ask.
Actually, I didn't post one. That might have been somebody else who.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I saw. Oh, Christian. Okay, maybe I'm misreading the chat window there. My apologies.
I think the other piece I also want to add is that if you're, you know, in between or looking for a new job and the time, there is a little bit of time availability. Some employers, depending on the size, of course, I think the smaller employers will work this arrangement out where maybe you do a paid for freelance project with them just to see what the experience is like. And if you like it, then, you know, you move forward. And if you don't like it, you get some money out of it, you get some experience, and you move on amicably. So, yeah.
Excellent. So with that, I think we've run through our questions for this evening. I did want to take a moment and thank our panelists. This has been a fantastic, it's always great to kind of get walk through the whole kind of customer experience CX of job seekers and what to think about, what to strategize about, tactics, techniques, the actual end-to-end chain that people run through, how to optimize for results and take learning from others as well as our own. I did want to give a brief moment I left out of our intro at the beginning for Debashish, if he's still here, just to talk about next month's presentation right before we conclude.
Sure, thanks, Tom. So we have something exciting for everyone to start off the new year. We're now talking about people trying to get jobs and how to get into, you know, what they need to do in order to get a new job. In January, we're going to talk about how to progress in your product management career, how to go up the ladder. And we have Rich Mironov, who's a 35-year veteran of product management in Silicon Valley. He's one of the leaders of Silicon Valley product management. He has been doing this for a very long time. He's been in 6 startups. He's been in several companies. He jumps in to help as VP product, Chief Product Officer at different times. He was also one of the founders of Product Camp, which is something that SVPMA organizes every year. Unfortunately, since the pandemic started, we haven't had a chance to do one, but we hope to do another one soon. So Rich, if you have had the opportunity to hear him, has this excellent take on what it takes for you to go up the career ladder. What are the responsibilities of a product manager? What are the responsibilities of a senior product manager? What are the responsibilities of a director? And so on. and how do you acquire the skills while you're in the job to move up to the next rung in the career ladder of product management. So that's going to be on January 12th, and we will have the information up on our website very soon. And I think that would be a great start to the year. If you're interested, please join.
Yeah, especially if you're making New Year's resolutions to work on upwards career growth. This is a fantastic kickoff for the year. Rich Mironoff's always a great dynamic speaker and one of our most popular speakers at our Product Camp events. So stay tuned to your calendar. Please enjoy the holidays and have a safe and happy holidays. And we look forward to seeing you in the new year. Again, if you have any ideas for talks or want to help and volunteer, any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I know there's several of you that already have with book suggestions and other things for the website. If you have any interest at all in helping out with that, please drop me a line. I do have a backlog currently in my inbox, but I will get back to you soon. And once again, thank you once again to the speakers. This has been just a really great presentation, great discussion. We will be posting this on YouTube. So if you know somebody who could benefit from this talk and they just happen to be tied up this evening, this will be available on demand on our YouTube channel as soon as we can get all the video processed, probably within the next week or two. So with that, we look forward to seeing you next month, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you so much for having
Thank you.
us. Look
Yeah,
forward to
this
seeing
was
you guys in
great.
the future.
Thanks. Yep. We'll see you all in the new year.
All right. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Thank you all.